Welcome to False Rape Timeline Hangout 48. Got a lot of ground to cover this hangout. The main subject is media mendacity. Having said that, I'm going to go into some news articles. There's quite a lot here from various sources. Okay, let's start with the most recent. The moronic Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. If you watch the events of January 6th in Washington, it was quite disgraceful. As this woman is a total moron. She's also a liar of the first order. She claimed that she was in danger of people. Basically, people were coming to try to kill her, to murder her, and that's been exposed as complete rubbish because she wasn't in the main building. She's also claiming now to be a survivor of sexual assault. This traumatised her, along with, she was reliving the trauma. She doesn't explain any, and doesn't give any details about this so-called sexual assault. And it never happened. We can be sure it never happened, as I say, firstly because this woman is a notorious liar. Any man who tried to attack her or succeeded, she would have clawed his eyes out or clawed his face, and she would have reported it. No two ways about that. But this mantra, it's for celebrities, and she is a celebrity. She's not much of a politician, but she's certainly a celebrity. It's a status symbol. There's so many women and a few men who claim to have been raped and whatever. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'll play a short clip of her here.
The reason I say this and the reason I'm getting emotional in this moment is because these folks who tell us to move on, that it's not a big deal, that we should forget what's happened, or even telling us to apologize, these are the same tactics of abusers. And I'm a survivor of sexual assault. And I haven't told many people that in my life. But when we go through trauma compounds on each other. And so whether you had a negligent or, a neglectful parent, or whether you had someone who was verbally abusive to you, whether you are a survivor of abuse, whether you experience any sort of trauma in your life, small to large, these episodes can compound on one another.
The musician Marilyn Manson, who should be pictured here, has been accused of multiple allegations of grooming, abuse and manipulation. And he's been dropped by his record label. This isn't the first time. I don't know how much truth there is in this, probably not a lot. Regret sex or regret whatever. But this whole Me Too rubbish is, it's got beyond a joke now. Quite a big story here in UK is that there was an attempt to force the Crown Prosecution Service, the Clown Prosecution Service, to bring more prosecutions for rape. And the women behind it include the End Violence Against Women Coalition and the Centre for Women's Justice. And you should know, if you've frequented the timeline at all, you should know that just because something sounds grand, the Centre for Women's Justice doesn't mean it's anything to do with justice. The Centre for Women's Justice is run by two dedicated man-haters. The journalist, so-called Julie Bindel, and her lover, the lawyer Harriet Wistrich. And if you want to see the damage these two have caused, check out the entries for Emma Humphries and Sally Challen in particular, and also of Jane Andrews. All women who murdered men and got away with it after a fashion. Humphries served about 5 years in jail. Challen a bit more than that. And the Humphries case is very illuminating, because the analysis I published of it is based on actually the words of Humphries herself and the rubbish that Bindel and Wistrich had churned out. But they're dissatisfied with the prosecution or lack thereof of rape. Here's one from the Guardian, article from the Guardian of January 26. Marie was 17 when a relationship turned violent. We were talking daily rape and at least weekly fighting, she says. At times during her 2 years together, her boyfriend would also confiscate her clothes, keep her awake at night and hack her phone. It was only 10 years later that she reported the rapes to the police, encouraged by them to do so when she was reporting another crime. She was hesitant at first, but then recorded a 4-hour video statement and over a 41-page journal written in the aftermath of the relationship ending, and gave officers a list of around 30 people she told at the time. Then they told me the video had been corrupted and that they might think about dropping the case, because that was my first account, she said. I mean, seriously. I'm absolutely ridiculous, these cases. Nina thought the man in her church wanted to help her. She was in her 20s, told the senior figure about problems she was having. He married in his 50s, said he could heal her. I was brainwashed, she said. I fell for everything. Our first relationship was platonic, but it progressed until, she says, he was controlling her and watching every move she made. She remembers on one occasion trying to stop me having sex with her, closing her legs and saying it hurt. She says she went into a dissociative state. It is, yeah. And I just froze, all that nonsense. When I came around, he was on top of me, she says. His face was really evil, like a devil. That's the only way I can explain it. She told no one, too scared to talk to anyone about the relationship and too scared to leave, she says. He said to me, if you tell anybody, I'll come after you. I'll kill you, then I'll kill myself, because my life won't be worth living. Same old rubbish. She had a relationship, and when the man was convicted of physically assaulting a woman, Nina went to the police and told them what had happened to her. And around 2 years later, she received a letter saying the CPS had decided not to charge the man because of inconsistencies in their account. These women are pathetic. There's one here called India. When India was 20 and a university student, she went on a date with another student. She found him arrogant and egotistical. But when he walked her to his house instead of walking her home, she reluctantly agreed to go in for a cup of tea, thinking she would leave straight. Unbelievable. This is absolutely unbelievable. All this rubbish. And one more, Olivia, who looks more like looks like a lesbian here actually. On a beautiful summer afternoon, Olivia met her parents for drinks and food. She went home and a few more drinks and went back to the pub, this time on her own. When she left at 11 p.m, she was, by her own account, very inebriated. A little after 1 a.m, she was found distressed and semi-conscious outside a shop. After a worried friend had taken a call from her phone to the police. Olivia, who is gay, oh yes. It's the haircut that does it. It's chronic pain caused by bone disease, and can only remember lighted snippets, but knew she'd been raped. I don't remember any conversations with her apart from saying no, I don't want that. I mean, the guy was charged. A trial was set for late February, but in December the case was dropped. The CPS offered no evidence of pre-trial hearing and the case was dismissed. I kept wondering if I'd done something wrong. Well, getting drunk and walking the streets at 1 a.m. isn't a good idea, but I don't want to appear to victim blame. I mean, I don't know. A letter to the CPS from a lawyer stated that footage showed the man forcing her hand down his trousers and putting his hand down into her shorts. When she removed both hands, he did it again. It stated the CCTV footage did not include a 40-minute period arguing Olivia's medical. Well, I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, that case sounds like it should have gone ahead, but here, I'll come to it in a bit here. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get policy changes in these prosecutions. Rape victims speak out ahead of legal challenge to CPS policy. And got some more allegations here. The number of rape prosecutions is more than halved, falling 60% to the lowest figure of record in the same period. Well, sure, that's good news, no? If less fewer women are being raped. And you've got this drill here about Harriet Wistrich. There's huge concern about the sudden collapse in prosecutions. Well, when women like you are preparing the evidence, encouraging women to no, sorry, I don't buy into that. And here's another one from The Guardian. This is share your experiences of reporting rape in the UK justice system. Less than 2% of reported rapes lead to a charge in England and Wales. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Oh, this is just a submit your report. Well, that's an open invitation, isn't it? And it could all sorts of rubbish could be submitted there. And this is another one from the Observer. The Guardian Observer. It must be the Observer. It's on the Guardian website. Sunday, January 21st. In a landmark hearing this week, rape victims aim to discover if their complaints failed due to a cover-up move to drop weak cases in quotes. Guess who wrote it? Julie Bindle. Over the course of 4 days in 2017, Kat Ariniello was raped 3 times, once at knife point by a man she briefly dated. He was attentive, charming, attractive, says Ariniello, an HR professional. He showed me his Metropolitan Police warrant card when we first met. Because he was a police officer, I immediately felt safe with him. But after a few weeks, he began to display signs of jealousy and possessiveness. During an evening at her flat, he flipped. He smashed my phone, punched me hard on the head, pulled out my hair, tried to break my hand, and then he raped me. She was too scared to ask him to leave, in case it provoked even worse violence as well. I mean, there's a lot here, but you have to bear in mind this is Julie Bindle writing this. And, right, before progressing any further, well, maybe we don't have to progress any further. Let me give you a few examples of. I'll tell you what. When I get onto the main theme, you'll understand that there is another side to this story. There's one here. In 2014, Theresa reported the 1991 assaults by a police officer. Charges were brought. In 2014, she reports a guy for being sexually abusing him, and it's just ludicrous. I mean, how many years is that? 1991. God, that's 23 years, isn't it? I mean, seriously, no, it's ludicrous. And there's other cases along here. When I come to the main subject, you'll understand why. I should mention Wilfred Wong. Wilfred Wong is, I don't think I mentioned him here actually, but he's a nutter. He's one of these people who believes in the grand conspiracy. He and 5 other people kidnapped a young boy who they believe was satanic abuses. It's a a custody dispute, and they're in custody now themselves. One of them appears to have committed suicide in prison. They're just total nutters, these people. Check out the Grand Conspiracy, the hangout for the Grand Conspiracy for details of that. Right, media mendacity. Back in 1976, Professor Butz wrote, "The major implication of this work, the media in the Western democracies are exposed as constituting a lie machine of vaster extent than even many of the more independent-minded have perceived." He was talking about what he believed to be the hoax of the 20th century. The hoax of the 21st century and probably the 20th century is the purported scale of sexual abuse. There is a lot of it, but it's been greatly exaggerated, and there are a lot of lies out there. A lot of these beliefs are due to the media, the mendacity of the media. If you've been following events in American politics in recent months, you will be aware of this. The way the media has been lying on a grand scale and pushing lies. I mean, the aforementioned Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's told God knows how many lies. The media pushes these false narratives and these lies. This is something called gaslighting. I've no doubt many of you are familiar with the term and understand what it's about, but for those who are not, and perhaps for those who are not native English speakers, it comes from a play called Angel Street, which was filmed as Gaslight in 1940 and remade in 1944. To cut a long story short, it's about a bloke who was trying to drive his wife mad. He has peculiar motives as well. I mean, years before, his wife is somewhat younger than him. Years before, he'd murdered a woman in an adjacent building, and he's looking for the hidden stash of rubies or something. And he tries to drive his wife mad. She has had mental problems earlier, so she isn't that credible. He comes undone, but basically gaslighting is, I suppose it's a variation of the big lie technique. You'll often hear this attributed to Goebbels. In fact, it was Adolf Hitler who wrote about it in 1923 in Mein Kampf. He put an anti-Semitic bent on it, but it's actually a very astute piece of reasoning. But when people are told big lies, and these lies are repeated again and again and again, there's a tendency to believe them because, you know, I mean, can all these people be lying? Can all this be untrue? Yes, I mean, it stands to reason that not all the world's religions can be true. If Christianity is true, Islam can't be. If Islam is true, then what about Mormonism, Scientology? There are liars galore out there. A lot of them probably most of them actually are not to do with religion, but pushing all sorts of rubbish and telling you half the truth. The media of the Western so-called democracies is indeed a vast lie machine. I'm going to concentrate mostly on celebrities here, but it isn't only celebrities this sort of thing impacts. And here is a press report from 1995. A bloke named Geoffrey Knights was to stand trial for grievous bodily harm, which is a serious offence. I mean, it's triable only on indictment in this country. On October the 4th, the trial was halted by the judge because of unfair, outrageous and oppressive reporting. A police investigation into claims of, quote, improper collusion between journalists and witnesses in the trial was then ordered by the Solicitor General Sir Derek Spencer. Judge Roger Sanders stopped the proceedings against Mr. Knight because unlawful, misleading, scandalous and malicious pre-trial reporting meant he would not get a fair hearing. Generally speaking, a trial that serious won't be stopped, but it shows how seriously the authorities take this sort of thing and how dangerously this sort of reporting and misleading reporting how dangerous it can be. In this day and age, a judge will advise juries to say, don't research this, deal with this case only on the facts you hear presented in this courtroom. The reason for that is that there can be all sorts of rubbish out there. There might be a man with a similar name or the same name who's been accused of something. It may be the bloke on trial or the woman on trial has been accused before and has been totally exonerated. Some people, false allegations will be made against them again and again and again, and teachers can be victims of repeated false allegations. So there's a very real possibility here of actual injustice, of the innocent being convicted. So judges warn against this sort of thing. I think I mentioned this before, it's discussed on the timeline, but the Ghomeshi case in Canada. John Ghomeshi was a radio personality, and in, let's see, this 2014 I think it was, he's a male feminist, so that limits my sympathy for him. Well, he was a male feminist, I'm not so sure he is now. It suffers from some sort of nervous complaint. He carries a teddy bear around with him. What happened was that he's into, or was into, bondage and sadomasochism. I've got here part of an article from, I'm not sure where I got this. Face punching and choking to the point of unconsciousness are absolutely some people's kinks. But even among seasoned BDSM players, these acts are widely understood to be things you must do only with the most carefully negotiated consent, with a goodly amount of education and practice. I've never been able to understand this. I've always liked a bit of romance in my sex, and if I have a desire to hit somebody in the face, it isn't because I get off on it. But anyway, what happened was one of his partners, I think she suffered a bruised or broken rib or something, and because he was in, I think it was a morality clause in his contract, and he was sacked. And then a gaggle of women came forward making allegations against him from years before, led by Lucy Dicotere, and they conspired openly over social media to frame him for one of the allegations was overcoming sexual resistance by choking. In Canada, as I've said before, Canada is the worst, arguably the worst country in the world to be falsely accused of sexual assault, any kind of sexual offence. There are no jury trials. There was a trial by a judge. He was accused of allegations against 3 women, not the original complainant, as it were. And they're so obviously lying that, well, let me put it this way. Ghomeshi saved correspondence and emails which was like a decade old. If he hadn't, he'd still be in prison now. Judge William Hawkins cleared him. And after that, the alias lucidicateur was given space by the Guardian to parrot her lies, the lies which have been rejected by the judge. Absolutely outrageous. Majesty signed a peace bond for. There was one more case, one more allegation. He signed a peace bond. One of I think this is Dicateur. You kicked my ass last night, and that makes me want to fuck your brains out. Well, is that the language of a victim? Seriously, a survivor? I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. There've been a number of these false allegations of witch hunts. The domestic case in Canada was about the worst, certainly the worst this century. In the United States, there was the Cosby case. I've actually made 2 full-length videos on that. The one you should watch is The Prior Bad Acts of Gloria Allred, which goes into detail about. I mean, the Cosby case was absolutely outrageous. And as I said before, if Cosby hadn't been black, he would have been. He'd been in a lot more trouble. Yeah, I'll play a bit of this clip. This is Don Lemon, one of the dumbest men on TV, a black homosexual who sees white supremacy everywhere, including his bedroom, I believe. And he asked perhaps the only intelligent question he's ever asked of an interviewee: why didn't you bite him? And he caught some flack for that.
Can I ask you this, because and please, I don't mean to be crude, okay?
Yeah.
Because I know some of you, and you said this last night, that you lied to him and said, I have an infection, and if you rape me, or if you have intercourse with me, then you will probably get it and give it to your wife.
Right.
And you said he made you perform oral sex.
Right.
You know, there are ways not to perform oral sex if you don't want to do it.
I was kind of stoned at the time, and quite honestly, that didn't even enter my mind.
Yeah.
Now I wish it would have.
Right.
But
meaning the using of the teeth, right?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. I didn't even think of it.
Biting. So.
Ouch.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a thoroughly intelligent question. Why didn't you bite the geezer? Check out Shima Benson, Shima Simone, who actually did that. She was attacked by a serial killer, a bloke named Devon Chenette, in her own home. She bit him so hard that when he was arrested, that bite might help convict him. He beat her viciously, but she lived to see him die by lethal injection. So why didn't you bite him? I just froze. This is the usual garbage. I blamed the Cosby case, Cosby's false conviction. Well, I say false conviction. It had a reason. The sexual assault he was tried for, Andrea Constant, had reasonable doubt written all over it, but it was due to Gloria Allred. But having said that, the media kept putting on these false accusers, women who had zero credibility, some who were described as unrapeable. They're just so corrupt, they're unreal. And the media, instead, well, there was, in the early days of the witch hunt, of the 2014 witch hunt, there'd been an earlier one after the Constant case was leaked to the media a decade before. But there was some scepticism, but there were just so many false accusers, and you know, this isn't the way to try people for any crime. They should have gone to the police at the time, but they didn't go to the police at the time because these events didn't happen at the time. They occurred years and decades later in their tiny minds. And Allred actually used this as an attack on the statute of limitations, and it had some limited success. In the UK, there was a similar witch hunt which affected more than one person. This was Operation U-Tree. Again, I've covered this before. Operation U-Tree resulted from allegations, posthumous allegations, against Jimmy Savile. I made a short video about that a while back, well, fairly recently actually. The truth about Jimmy Savile, which you'll find on BitChute. Savile was questioned in October 2009, and he debunked the allegations. 2 years later he died, and then they were revived, and there were appeals made for further victims and survivors to come forward, and they came forward in their droves. Because Savile couldn't be prosecuted, being dead, the authorities turned to other celebrities, and this was Operation U-Tree, and there was some quite disgraceful treatment, not just by the legal authorities but by the media. David Lee Travis was absolutely outrageous the way they treated him. Rolf Harris and Max Clifford were convicted. Clifford protested his innocence all the time, up to his death in prison, and one of the allegations they brought against him was outrageous. It was just this wasn't part of the charges because it was supposed to have happened abroad. He was supposed to have sexually abused a 13-year-old girl in a sauna, which was a whirlpool, a jacuzzi. Absolutely outrageous, clearly false. Rolf Harris, what they did to him was, as with Clifford, they wanted him to die in prison. Rolf Harris was one of the greatest entertainers of our age of all time. A unique entertainer, singer, songwriter, fairly good artist, painted the Queen at one point, TV presenter, massive star in Britain, and also in his native Australia. He lived in Britain for most of his life, almost all his life. Came here as a young man, and he had an affair with a much younger, very ill-advised friend of his daughter Bindi, and he was old enough to be a father and then a bit. And foolishly admitted this. The truth came out when it was revealed he had another mistress, and she claimed that he'd come onto her when she was 13. This was 1997. The truth came out, and they dug that up. He was foolish enough to send a handwritten letter to her parents apologising. Whereas with Cosby, honesty got him nowhere. They'd been better off denying it. These women are utterly pathetic. And what they did with Harris, they trawled lunatics from around the world, and the media gave him enormous publicity. There was a claim, he lived in Sydenham at one point where I live, and there was a claim that a workman had done some work on his house and found a stash of child porn under the stairs or something like that, and of course didn't report it at the time. Well, this was meant to be in the 70s. Well, child porn was extremely risky in the 1970s. I mean, it's still quite risky now. There were lots of prosecutions for it, but there was no internet, well, not for us plebs anyway. It was email, but again, not for us plebs. Making it would have been extremely dangerous, certainly in this country. I believe there was some made on the continent, probably in the Far East, although the Far East wasn't the paedophile's playground it is now. So this was a complete manufactured story, but the media ran with it, and this resulted in, well, Harris was convicted. While he was in prison, they brought more charges against him. Now, as I said earlier, with some of these pathetic women who it's been argued that the men should have been prosecuted on their say-so, that the cases were strong, but they weren't prosecuted. Here's an example of a case that is based on nothing. Hot air. John Leslie. This predates Operation Yewtree. John Leslie, as some of you may know, was a TV presenter. Quite a big name. Again in the UK. 6'5", handsome, charismatic. Ticks all the right boxes for women, alpha male. And in 2002, 2003, Ulrika Jonsson published her autobiography titled Honest. I'm not sure it deserves that. And she claimed to have been date raped when she was starting out in her career. Matthew Wright on a TV programme said everybody knows it's John Leslie. October 2002 it was. And a gaggle of women came forward making allegations against him. As I pointed out in I think I pointed out in a previous hangout, there was a stark example of how testimonies are changed by the media, because some 6 years prior to this, a young woman sold her story to I think it was a son, and I haven't got this on the timeline yet. I will do it at some point, but there were problems, as you may know, at the moment with the COVID situation. A young woman sold a story to the media about her interaction with Leslie, and after this Ulrika Jonsson business, as it was going on, she sold a story to a sister paper, and it was very, very different. And the media just pushed this nonsense. Clearly, the witch hunt of John Leslie would have been a lot less severe but for this media madness. Now, as I said with the earlier cases, Leslie has been charged time and time again. The latest one, a woman came forward years later accusing him of indecently assaulting her in a bar. If you look at the CPS, what they claim about I hear it. This is the usual pat we were given. This is just for rape. This is for any offence. The test for rape with serious sexual offences prosecutions is the same as for any other offence. The prosecutor must be satisfied that there is sufficient evidence to provide a realistic prospect of conviction, and that a prosecution is required in the public interest. Well, a woman coming forward and claiming to have been groped by John Leslie or anyone else 5, 6, 10 years ago, is that sufficient evidence? Is it really? No, it is complete bunk. So I've no doubt that there are some rape cases which should be pursued, which aren't. But there are a lot of cases, and including on the timeline, many cases of an historical or semi-historical nature, which are prosecuted that shouldn't be. Another media witch hunt was that of former Prime Minister Edward Heath, who had been dead for a decade and more. He died in, I think, 2005. And years after his death, these allegations materialised of because Heath never married, his accusers were all men. And some of them absolutely outrageous. The Chief Constable of was it Warwickshire? There was one chief constable who was taken in by this rubbish, and this led to Harvey Proctor and others, the VIP paedophile ring nonsense. And again, this was largely media generated. Though I will give the BBC some credit. The police spent 2 years chasing this mythical paedophile ring, and the BBC did an investigation into one aspect of it, and they concluded it was total bunk. I should mention the case of Robert Hughes. Like the man who shares his initials, Robert Hughes is an Australian. He was quite a big star in Australian soaps. Sarah Moynihan, an actress who had been a child actress working with him, she went off to the States and she came back with a head full of satanic conspiracies. And on that account, Hughes was convicted of historical offences and given a 12-year sentence. All bunk, but again, media. One case that really does warrant proper mention here is that of Cardinal George Pell, which was again in Australia, and so outrageous it beggars belief. There's even that imbecile Tim Minchin wrote a song about him. Cardinal Pell. This guy was convicted in a court of public opinion over and over and over again. And the offence of which he was convicted was clearly physically impossible, and there was caused a big furore in the Australian media. This stuff is, this is innocent people's lives. It isn't just with sexual offences, it isn't just with men. It really is outrageous, some of this reporting. I mean, there are fairly stringent reporting in the UK, the Contempt of Court Act 1981. In America, there's more of a free-for-all, but with social media, it's difficult to stop a lot of this nonsense. And once it gets into the system, people hear this, and they believe it, or they can't help but believe it a lot of the time. It really is very sad. Right, that's about it. When you visit the timeline, check out. Always look at the media bias. The cases mentioned on there are proven, overwhelmingly they're proven false cases. There are acquittals of men have been tried for rape, and acquittals. I don't include every case in which a man is acquitted of rape. If acquittal is overwhelming, I'll put it on the timeline. But if you look at some cases, the pre-trial publicity they get, and then when it comes down to the court, what actually transpires in the courtroom is often very, very different. Celebrities in particular understand this, but again, it isn't just celebrities. Ordinary people can be victimised by the media and are, and ordinary people don't generally have the resources celebrities have. Really, the media does play an enormous part in perpetrating this nonsense. A lot of the time by succumbing to feminist propaganda, parroting these absurd statistics about false rape allegations being extremely rare, about rape being a vastly underreported crime, all this rubbish. So always, when you read about sex cases especially, always be very suspicious especially if the reporting is particularly wild. So that's hangout number 48. I'll get this online within a day or two, and your comments are most welcome.